Hello and welcome to the RealEst podcast in real estate. And here today, I am Josiah Holstein, your host, and with me is Loren Winter.
Hello.
Hello. Today we're talking about first-time buyers, why buy now, the benefit of home ownership, and all that fun stuff. And so, starting us off, some financial benefits of home ownership versus renting. And now, I am, of course, pro homeowner. There's a lot of homes out there that exist that match a lot of people's rent. And I'm of the viewpoint, why rent? What's the point if, because you're kind of throwing your money away, it doesn't really go anywhere, it doesn't do anything, and it's going to use for someone else. Whereas you could take that money and apply it to a almost similar home at times and be having that money work for you and going into that savings account, which is your mortgage. And so, on that debate of why own a home or why rent, where do you place yourself and where do you think, or where would you say to push people towards?
Right. That's a great question, especially when you have somebody that's in a long-term renting scenario. Typically, I like to look at renting as being a great temporary solution, right?
Yeah.
The reason that I look at it that way is because if you don't have enough of a down payment saved up, or if you plan on moving anytime soon or something like that, renting might be a really good option, especially for those people who don't want to have to worry about the things that come with homeownership, such as maintenance and mowing the lawn and
This is,
things of that nature,
yeah.
right? So if you're in that situation where it's temporary and you need time to save up money for a down payment or to get your finances in line, renting is a great solution. But if you've been renting for years and years, I have to ask you, why, what are the benefits, really there, and how much might you be losing when you're renting? Because the thing with renting is that you are contributing to somebody else's wealth, essentially. You're
Yeah.
paying off somebody else's mortgage, whether you're renting a house or you're renting a duplex or you're renting an apartment. You are not doing anything to help out your own net worth. You're helping somebody else's, because every time you make a payment, part of that payment is going to either pay off their mortgage or to enrich them, and or both, right?
Yes.
So generally speaking, I look at it as if you are in a position now to where you'd like to take that next step, and you need to consider the financial benefits of that. So every time you make a mortgage payment, that goes towards your principal and interest. But every time that little bit you just chip away at that principal, that adds to your net worth and building your equity in that property. And so that money is helping you as opposed to helping somebody else. So
Yes.
you don't want to get stuck in that trap where, yes, it's great to have a place where you don't have to worry about mowing the lawn or taking care of any maintenance. If something goes wrong, you always have a phone call. But how much money are you losing every year? Because it's not just how much principal am I adding to that mortgage balance to reduce that amount and then gain that net worth, but it's also what is the cost of opportunity. And in this scenario, that's realized most times through equity gain through appreciation, right?
Yes.
So even if you took an average, and this is going to be different from market to market, but if you look at an average rate of appreciation in this area is fairly safely around 2% per year, which is pretty good. Now, some years it's less, some years it's certainly more. In the years of 2021, 2022, rates of appreciation were closer to 8%.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right? But it's not always like that. So it averages out, and let's say it's 1.8 to 2% over a period of 5 to 7 years, which typically when we have a first time home buyer, we do advise them you need to be prepared to stay in that home for 5 to 7 years, because that
Yeah.
is that area where that's that sweet spot where you probably will have enough equity combined with, or equity gained by, the reduction in principal through your payments and the appreciation that you get from that year over year, right?
Yeah, real estate's a very long-term thing, and a lot of people forget that. Granted, there is short-term income to be made here through flipping, wholesaling, and certain things like that, as an investing side of things. Now, for your average homeowner, these people, I've talked to many that were convinced, like, hey, if you buy now, in 2 years, you can make all this profit. You can have like a 10% increase, this, that, and the other. This is the way the market's moving. Agent wasn't very good at their job, apparently, and it did not go that way. And after speaking to them, they were way in over their heads, in which they could not be able to sell their home currently, and they were just barely matching their mortgage and where they needed to be on that monthly. And I'm like, guys, I don't know what to do here. I had to take a step back and let someone else take care of that.
Right. Yeah, and if we have somebody that's renting right now and they say, "Oh, well, I'm probably going to be moving for a job relocation or be closer to family," whatever the scenario is, within a couple years, I'm typically not going to say, "Oh, you need to consider buying," because buying is always the answer. Buying is not always the answer.
No.
But if it's going to be 5 to 7 years and you're fairly well established where you're at, you have good job history, you have decent credit. And when I say decent credit, let me qualify that. We have programs available to us, yes, where you can actually get financed with a credit score as low as 580.
We've seen it
So,
happen before.
right,
So, I mean,
right,
it's out there. The possibilities are endless. Financing is changing all the time, day and day. The industry is changing time and time, all
right.
day. I feel like every hour at this point, something new is coming out for real estate or in general towards the industry and business making as a whole.
Right, right. So again, if it's that short-term scenario, renting may be best for you, but if it's going to be long-term at all, you almost always come out ahead by buying
Yeah,
because that's going to be where you can actually generate some real wealth for yourself. If you want to upgrade at that point or move to a different city or whatever the scenario is, that
yeah,
you should have enough equity to be able to sell it, pay commissions, things of that nature. There's other benefits too, such as there's tax benefits to owning a house. So the interest that you pay every month is actually deductible. So
yeah,
you can write that off. Also, if you make energy efficient upgrades to your home, most of the time those are tax deductible as well. And in certain areas, depending on the municipality that you live in and the utility company, depending on what it is that you're installing, you might actually be able to get a rebate on what you're installing. So if you do
yeah,
low flow toilets or solar panels or things of that nature that are energy efficiencies, even appliances that are Energy Star rated. Sometimes utility companies will, if you're doing a new water heater and it's Energy Star rated, you may be able to get a rebate on that as well. So you get a little extra money. Now it's
nothing
not,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a huge windfall, but every little bit counts.
Oh, of course. If
Right,
you're saving money, you're saving money at
right.
the end of the day here.
And
Um,
because I've been doing this for a long time, and so I have more stories than what we have time for today and tomorrow and the next day. Okay. But let me preface it by saying that this is part of the reason why it's so important to get a good real estate agent who is experienced and knows what to anticipate and can educate the buyer um, about what the do's and the don'ts are and how the process goes, what to expect, basically, right?
yeah,
So, when young couple gets, pregnant for the first time, everybody buys that book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, right?
yeah,
So there's lots of different resources out there for new home buyers, and I will tell you that none of what you read can be replaced by an agent who has a lot of good experience.
yeah, or at
And
least the team backing it,
at least the team backing it, right? Because you can have a new agent, but if they have a fantastic team backing them, either their broker or their other folks within their brokerage, because depending on the culture of the brokerage, most times if it's a fairly progressive brokerage where people help each other out, they will always have the help that they need to navigate that buyer appropriately.
Yeah,
So I would never say to, you know, exclude a new agent necessarily from that process because we all have to learn. We all have to start somewhere,
oh
right?
yeah,
But having the brokerage with the strength and the experience needed to back them is super important. And so, one of the things that we teach our agents to do is to educate that buyer about what the process is going to be. So, we start that out, of course, by you had to sign a buyer's agency agreement. It's the law. It always has been the law here
Yeah.
in Missouri. Well, I shouldn't say always, but I got my broker's license back in 2000 and it was the law then, right?
It's been there for a hot minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've heard about the NAR lawsuits, and now getting a buyer's agreement nationwide is a requirement, and so that's a big change for some folks. Unfortunately, it's not that much of a change for us.
No, Missouri didn't seem to like change practice much at all. There was some
Right.
verbiage change for sure. We have to make more disclosures now as well. Um, but I don't feel like that's anything too crazy out of
No,
the
it's really
ordinary,
not.
you know?
And in practice, did every agent have their buyer sign a buyer's agreement before they went out and started looking at houses? In
No.
practice, the answer would be no. A lot of them did not. But should they? Should they have? Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
we this is something that we've always taught. We don't go out and show houses before that agreement is signed. And basically, that agreement is very simple. The state requires us to have it in writing that we have the ability to go show you a house and open that door for you, show you around basically,
Mhm.
and look at those different options. And if you choose to write up an offer, then we have that same agreement allows us to provide representation for you.
Yeah.
And so we have to educate our buyers first and foremost about that process and then what to expect as you're going out and looking at houses.
Yeah. Said the president, I'm the kind of person that likes to look at everything inside the house too. You know,
Mhm.
whenever I'm going and showing things with people, I tell them ahead of time, like I'm scanning the entire place here while I'm walking around. I want to make sure that you're buying a home that looks nice, feels nice. Um, Granted, I am no professional, and I'm not going to say I'm a professional inspector or like anything of that sort. This is eyeballing it from experience and trades that I do have. But if I see something that looks like shit, I'm going to point it out. I'm going to say like, "Hey, that is not okay. That does not
Right.
look okay."
Yeah, I find it's uncanny the majority of the time when I'm showing a house, I spend most of my time either looking down at the floor or looking up at the ceiling because nine times out of ten in real estate, that's where you have the majority of your problems. And so
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking up and they're like, what are there
I'm
cameras? What's going on
not
here?
tripping, I swear.
So
Okay.
that's the other thing too. I mentioned cameras just in joking, but it's a really serious thing now too.
Mhm.
Almost every house you go into now has a ring doorbell and multiple cameras inside, and so I always advise my clients before we ever go inside that we are not going to make any comments about anything that we see. We're not going to make any discussions about, oh my God, I love this place or anything else like that. All that needs to wait until we get back outside and away from the front door because we don't want to say anything that would ruin our chances of having a successful negotiation.
Yeah.
So the worst thing that can happen is have a brand new buyer go into a place and there's cameras in there and I mean honestly the seller shouldn't be monitoring that, but they do. They do
Yeah.
sometimes. And it's their house and it's their right. We can't tell them not to.
It is a
Um,
one-party state in Missouri as well for recording. So you don't
right.
have to legally ask for consent of the party you are recording in order to record them,
Right.
as
And
long as
it's
the party
also
knows.
you're going onto their premise.
Yes, there's
So,
also that you're accessing private property. They have the
right.
right to record you on their
Absolutely.
private property.
So we do advise our sellers, please don't watch it because you're going to hear stuff that you don't want to hear.
Hmm.
People are going to gripe about that. If they see a family photo on there, like, oh my gosh, look at that goofy kid. These are things that no one should say,
Yeah,
but sometimes can. And if a seller is hearing stuff like that, it might jade their position in a negotiation should it move forward to an offer process. And so I always educate my buyers, please, while we're in here, just look at everything. If you have
hmm,
questions, please certainly ask. That's what I'm here for. But let's leave all of the personal stuff, how much you like it, how much you don't like it, whatever else, until we get back outside because I don't want to lose any ability to be able to negotiate on your behalf.
yeah.
Okay. So if you're like, oh my God, I just love this house. This is it. This is the one. This is the one. And we're going to offer $25,000 less than asking. Guess what? They just heard you say that on a recording that you absolutely loved it. And they know you're going to be willing to pay full price. And so that
Yeah.
we start with simple things like that. The other thing, though, is we spend a lot of time educating our agents how to communicate with their buyer in a way that resonates with them and in a way that we can actually truly find out what their goals and their objectives are. So
Yeah.
as a buyer, you need to be able to have a plan. And so your agent should be asking you questions like, why are you guys moving? What's the primary goal in doing this? It's not just moving or anything else like that.
Yeah.
Most of the time there's a driving factor. We want to be closer to family. We want to be in a better school area, whatever the scenario is, but there's almost always a driving factor, and understanding what those needs and what those goals and objectives are will help that agent to locate homes that are better suited for them based on what their needs are, not what
Yeah.
the agent wants, but what they want. So when you look at that perspective, this can help the agent and the buyer from accidentally looking at too many homes. And then you get into this analysis paralysis type scenario where you've looked at 40 houses and you still can't make a decision.
Yeah.
I've learned this the hard way. My record for showing houses is 64. So 64 houses for one couple. And I will tell you that, yes, this happened over 20 years ago. So when you talk about the fails, that's probably a failure on my part. Back then, I had done nothing but commercial real estate and development up to that point. And in
Oh yeah.
2005, I converted over to residential, and these were some of my very first clients.
Yeah, you were
And
unwise to any
right,
better.
right.
Yeah.
And so they were renting in a very small town outside of, I can tell you it was east of Springfield, but very small town.
Okay.
And they were renting a single wide trailer. Now, this is in, oh goodness sakes, this is right when the market crashed. So I had 2 years of really good sales because it was prior
Yeah.
to the crash, then 2007, 2008. And so these
Everything was going
were
on.
one of
Yeah.
my first clients uh, after the market crashed. And of course, everybody was feeling the pinch back then. Almost nothing was selling. And so you really try hard to get a sale. And so I'm showing them houses in similar sized towns and even slightly bigger, but places like Clever. And back then you could get a all brick, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 car garage house in Clever for $79,000.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Now, was the house a foreclosure? Yes, absolutely it was. Okay.
Uh,
Because there was so many foreclosures on the market back then,
I mean,
right?
it was post market crash. That's
Right.
all there was for
So
the most
again,
part.
they're renting a single wide trailer in a very small town. They just want to move closer to town, have more access to better stores, better shopping, medical facilities, things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
And 64 houses later, I used to be married. My wife and I decided to go on a cruise, and I was going to be out of town, and I called up one of my agents and I said, "Could you please show them a house this weekend? There's one up in Brighton that they want to go look at." And I didn't know very much about it. I was getting ready to go on vacation. I said, "Here's the address." And sure as the world, they chose that house. Now, this is where it's really important for an agent to really find out and spend that time with the client to really discern what their goals and their objectives are and
Yeah.
really what they want. Now, I showed them 64 houses. The husband loved a ton of them. The wife didn't love any of them.
Mm.
None of them. And somewhere in there, my failure was that I never spent enough time with her to find out really what it was that she wanted. Now,
Yeah.
between you and me, I think she just liked spending, Saturdays and Sundays looking at houses.
That's fair.
Right.
There's some
I
people
think
who
she
really
just
enjoy
enjoyed that,
the
right?
yeah.
And, occasionally we'd go out to lunch and guess whose bill that was on. So, yeah, I think that
You
she
get free
enjoyed that
lunch
part,
too.
right? So a couple times, yeah. What they finally decided on was a double wide trailer in Brighton.
Oh.
And so that disconnect there, because here I am, I'm showing them what I think are superior to what they came from, all brick, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 car garage, and what they ended up writing a contract on. The minute I went on that cruise, my agent sends me an email and she says, "We wrote a contract today." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." Yeah,
Yeah.
I show them, 64 houses and you show them one and you
That's
write the
it. Yeah.
contact on it. And I'm like, what is it? She goes, it's a double wide in Brighton. Here I've been busting my rear to get them a house that I think is going to be better, but I didn't make that connection that she didn't necessarily want better. She
Yeah.
wanted familiar.
Yeah.
She wanted familiar.
And it's important, and it's a great lesson that you just spoke of, and just communication in general,
Right,
and why we communicate and the failures that did happen there.
right,
Having that ability to be open and honest and be able to say like, hey, this is what I'm actually looking for. These are my goals. These are why I want to achieve my goals and when I want to achieve them by, so that that way we can better help each other. Help me help you get to the point. Um, and so
right,
the great lesson in that.
right. So for everyone that you have that now, I would never show anybody 64 houses now because I have a
Yeah,
lot,
more experience.
yes, absolutely. And, after, 25 years of being a broker and experiencing most of the things that you can experience in this business, I spend an enormous amount of time right at the very beginning talking with people to make sure that I have an accurate understanding so that I'm not 40, 50 houses deep before they make a decision.
Yeah,
Most of my people make a decision within 5 or 6 houses. Many of my people make a decision on their first house. And then I have to actually flip the coin and say, okay, I know you love this house. I know we looked at a ton of stuff online before we ever came out because I've been sending you listings for a month now, or maybe it's only 2 weeks now, but I've sent them a ton of stuff.
yeah.
And I have a really good understanding because I've laid that foundation for us, right?
Hmm.
Now, because I've only shown you one house, please, you need to convince me that this is the house for you because I've only shown you one. And
Yeah.
yes, I know you love it, but the worst thing in the world for me would be that you call me a year or two from now and say, Loren, for God's sakes, why did you let us buy this house? This is terrible. We don't like it here, whatever the
Yeah, there was
reason may
something we
be.
didn't look
Right,
too far
right.
into.
And knock on wood, I can say that I have never had a client call me and, lament their purchase. And in
Yeah,
fact, the majority of people who have decided on that first house are in that position in the past year or two where they've actually called me back and said, we think it's time to sell, it's time to upgrade. And they had a lot of equity built up as a result of making the right decision the first time. It really is true that whether you're an investor or a first time home buyer, you make your money when you buy the house.
yeah,
Now, some people think, oh, that's negotiating a really low price. That's not necessarily true. It's picking the right house in the right area to ensure that you're going to have that ability to have appreciation with that property over time. So there are areas that you can buy where all real estate is local, and sometimes it gets hyper local. So one
yeah,
neighborhood might be appreciating at 8%, and the neighborhood right next door to it
yeah.
may be 20 years older, and it's only appreciating at
Like you could chuck a
1.5%.
rock at the house next to you across the street, and
Right,
for some reason it's worth 15% more than
right,
your home just because it's in a different neighborhood than you.
right,
It's a very inefficient market, and best way example of inefficient versus efficient is like Walmart. No matter where you go and which store you go to, most of all the prices you see are going to be similar. Whereas with real estate, it's extremely inefficient. This is not federally based or nationally based markets. What you see going on in California will not affect Southwest Missouri necessarily. There's a lot of differences between it. Granted, you can find pocket markets that are very similar.
right,
You can
right.
do that with just about anything, though.
Yeah.
So,
The only time we find that, California or Florida is affecting us is when somebody bought a house in the 70s for $60,000 and then in California and then just sold it for $1 million. And then they move here
yeah,
and they buy a $200,000 house and it's the biggest house they've ever lived in,
yeah.
you know. So, and they buy it cash. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that now we don't have as much of that as we did before. Missouri actually is not very high on the migration list of where people are moving in the United States to Missouri. I think in 2024, I think we were 18th or 19th on the list
Yeah,
of,
we're climbing more
popular
and more.
states. Um, so, but that doesn't mean that that isn't a portion of it. But we don't have nearly as many cash buyers in the market today as we did a year or two ago.
No,
Yeah,
it's dried up a lot more for that. There's a lot more plans I'm seeing all the
right,
time that's like zero down plan, getting the
right.
plan at zero down.
But that's good news for first time homebuyers
Oh yeah,
because they're no
100%.
longer competing with as many cash buyers out there as what we had before. A
Yeah,
lot of that migration has already taken place. I don't know if we'll see a resurgence in that. That's one thing. If anybody tries to predict and tells you, oh, 6 months or a year from now,
yeah.
whatever, I'm going to say that they're probably talking out their ass because it's really hard to predict what's going to happen much farther out than 6 months from now.
So I hear a lot of people say all the time, like, why should I buy now? You know,
It's a great question. Why now? The interest rates are too high. I don't want to pay 7% interest. I
historical average, might I say, historical average.
right. I mean, if you go back to the 80s, you hear stories of people paying 13, 14, 15. I've even heard this last week somebody said that they heard of somebody paying 18% interest back in, the 80s.
Yeah.
Yes, inflation was nuts back then. So
Oh,
that is, the consequence of that. Interest rates right now, of course, by the time, somebody watches this 2 or 3 months from now, it's probably going to be different. But right
oh
now,
yeah.
conventional loans floating around 7%. A FHA loan is floating around 6 or just slightly above it. And if we could write a magic number for us right now would be around 5.99, that would get a lot of people off the fence. But
Yeah.
here's my point on there. Having rates floating around 6 to 7% is still historically good. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not
we're
a bad rate. Granted, it's not the 2.8% that your mom or your dad may have, purchased their house at and they're very
no.
happy, or 3.25% or whatever, or even buying second homes at 4.25%, over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
All these are fantastic rates. But I think we have to understand is that, it's kind of like going to a garage sale and you see a Gucci bag laying there for 25 bucks and you know for a fact that this bag is worth $1,200. It's the best deal of your life, right?
Yeah.
So those people who got financed in 2000, 2021, 2022, when the interest rates were that low,
Yes.
they got the best deal of their lives,
Oh, 100%.
right?
You couldn't tell anyone that COVID was going to happen and cause the market to
Right.
crash, you
So
know?
I'm not certain that we will ever see rates that low again in my lifetime.
No.
We might see fives. It's possible even low fives, but I don't see that coming anytime soon. Certainly not in the next few years. Now, granted, this is debatable. I'm not an economist. I'm a real estate broker. Okay.
Yeah, there's different tax cuts and promises from current presidential candidate and
Sure.
everything that are like, oh, this could happen, this could happen.
Of
But I
course.
don't think we'll see anything make any major movement for the first solid year and a
Right.
half.
The problem is with all those things, even with our current president right now, who has vowed to make some significant changes there and to help with prices and interest rates. All those things take time. So there's nothing that he's going to be able to do, no executive order that he can write today that's going to immediately drop the rates. And the
Yeah.
rates are affected by more things than just inflation
Oh
or the
yeah.
jobs report. It is very multifactorial. And I don't want to get into that because, again, I'm not an economist and I don't write mortgages for a living. But at the same time, I've been doing this for a very long time. What I can tell you is that the sooner you buy, even if it's at a higher interest rate than what you're wanting to pay, the most important thing that you can do is focus on what is my payment goal? What is the goal of the payment that I don't want to exceed? That
Yeah.
is not going to be so high that I'm going to be house poor. And what I mean by house poor is every spare bit of money I've got. I can't go bowling anymore. I can't go see movies. I can't go out and grab fast food on the way home because every bit of my money is going into the house. That's house poor. And you don't
Yeah.
want to put yourself into a position that you can't maintain a style of life or lifestyle rather that you would prefer. And
Mhm.
most of us like to be able to have some of those extra things in life, right? So if you have a payment goal in mind that you know is comfortable for you, and you can get with a mortgage broker who can meet that payment goal. I don't care if the interest rate is 10%. Well, I mean,
We
yes,
do
we all
care.
would
We
care. I don't want to say I don't care. But if, let's just say, crazily, that interest rate is 10%, and that's the going rate, and that's the best rate that you could get right now, but they can meet your payment goal, that's the most important thing. Buying today is always better. I'll give you an analogy with this. They say this. I've heard this several times in several different ways. But when's the best time to plant a tree?
20 years ago.
20 years ago. When's the next best time to plant a tree?
Today.
Today.
Right now.
Absolutely. Right.
Buy the house today. Now.
Absolutely. So you can't go back and say, "Man, I wish I'd have bought that house in 2019 or 2020 or whatever." That that is already that opportunity is past. It's
Oh
gone.
yeah.
We have to deal with the circumstances that we have today. And every day that you wait to buy a house, if you can meet your payment goal, is another day that you've not received the equity that you could have and the appreciation in that home. And so
Yeah.
the earlier you buy and the younger you're able to buy, the more financially stable you will be later on. Now, is this just Lauren, are you looking in your crystal ball here? No, I'm not. This is a statistical thing. And I can't quote the stats to you right now, but I can tell you that it is something that can be looked up that shows it's proven that people who
Yes.
buy houses are typically more financially better off years from now than those folks who don't. And it's because they gain that equity, they get that appreciation, and then they can turn that into other things. Even if they
Yeah.
never move, they'll be able to utilize that equity for other things like putting your kids through college or
Yeah.
buying another car or buying a second house or a boat or whatever it is that you want. That equity is working for you, not somebody else.
There's a whole lot of different loan programs as well. I've talked to a lot of mortgage brokers that have different loan programs for, I mean, for instance, elderly people to borrow against their equity. So if they have to purchase medical equipment or anything, they can do so at a, I don't want to say exactly, but there's different options out there for different people and different programs that exist to be able to borrow against your equity if you would
Right.
like to, you know?
Right. We have clients right now that have a home. I have a set of clients right now where they're engaged and they live in separate households.
Hmm.
One is renting, one owns. They are buying a house together. One of them owns a house and they're using the equity in that house they have a home equity line of credit and they're going to use that line of credit to come up with a down payment for the other house
Hmm.
and then they're going to sell this house. Now, obviously, the this particular party has had the house since way before the pandemic, and he has
Yeah.
plenty of equity in it, and so they're using that to their advantage. But that goes to my point: the earlier you buy, the more flexibility that you will have later down the line.
Yeah, we never know whenever we could experience something insane happening again. The world's changing
Right.
constantly every day. Who knows? You buying today might cause a vast amount of wealth to fall into your lap tomorrow, by
Right.
tomorrow. Who knows?
Right.
Um, man, I feel like that pretty well sums up most of the points we wanted to hit today.
Right. I think in closing, the only things that I would offer is again, make sure that, if you're looking for a real estate agent, I always recommend interviewing several different realtors. If you connect with the first one that you talk with, fantastic. That's fine. If you've got a relative or a friend or whatever, I know everybody's got a guy, right?
Oh yeah, everyone's got a
And
guy that's
so
got a
if
guy.
one of your guys, and I use that, term loosely, happens to be a realtor, then fantastic. But
Yeah.
make sure that you're having the conversation with them to ensure that they really have a good grasp on what your goals and your objectives are. Because just like in every profession, There are doctors who get sued for malpractice because they're not good at their job, right?
Yeah.
There's mechanics who get in trouble because they didn't fix the right thing or didn't fix your car at all, and you got to keep
Oh
taking it
yeah,
back or
they didn't
whatever, right?
warranty it properly, all sorts of things
Right,
that happen.
right. So we have lemon laws for cars and all kinds. The list goes on. There are also people in every profession that just aren't good at their job, and
No.
so you want to make sure that your agent is seasoned or at least has the backing from seasoned people so that you can get your goals and objectives as first priority as opposed to whatever that agent's goals and objectives are. If they aren't putting you
Yeah.
first, then you need to find somebody else who will.
There's a lot of people out there, a lot of people to work with. Find the ones that work best for you, you know,
Right.
someone that you vibe with, someone that's got your best interest in mind, um, someone that wants to work with you through this process.
Like this guy right here.
Yeah, work with me, please, honestly. I'm trying to achieve my goals too, all right? Um, so thank you for watching the RealEst podcast, the realest podcast in real estate. Today I was joined with Loren Winter. I'm Josiah Holstein. We love you. Peace.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.